Juries are not present. Counsel indicate you have something you want to discuss?
Yes, one of the areas that I intend to cover this morning is the testimony of Mr. Whitkin. And not all of his testimony. There was a section in front of our jury and then a section in front of Ms. Abramson's jury. And I think she had some issues with regard to which part of this should be in front of her jury.
Yes, I'm just trying to figure out, Your Honor, if there were any restrictions placed on Mr. Whitkin. Now, I know that the fact that he paid with a check and the fact that the check bounced was never placed in front of our jury. And I don't know if Ms. Lansing intends to ask any questions along that line.
No, I don't.
And the only other area was that there were some questions of Mr. Whitkin. Mr. Whitkin testified to some statements supposedly made by Lyle Menendez about he did want a will erased, he didn't really want a will erased. I mean, a number of statements that made Mr. Menendez and his intentions appear to be suspicious with respect to Mr. Whitkin, and none of that testimony was in front of our jury. And unlike an Aranda situation where this is a statement or a confession of some kind, all this is some kind of speculative or inferential evidence about suspicious behavior. And I don't feel it's appropriate for those matters to be gone into in front of the Erik Menendez jury.
People wish to be heard?
I think that Ms. Abrams' recollection is correct that these two things were not in front of the Erik Menendez jury. The statements, though, Lyle Menendez, at this point, there's no reason they shouldn't be. The bouncing check, I don't have any problem with reserving that to this single jury testimony, but the statements of Lyle Menendez certainly shouldn't, there's no reason they shouldn't be placed in front of both juries.
All right, anything further by way of argument?
Mayor, all I would say is those statements clearly were admissible not for the truth, therefore not as
confessions or admissions, but for some sort of inferential state of mind on the part of Lyle Menendez at a time and place when his brother was 3,000 miles away. And there's been no evidence presented that Erik Menendez had any knowledge that Lyle Menendez was going to hotfoot back to Los Angeles prior to the time that Erik was supposed to be there to meet a computer expert or do this thing.
Well, there's certainly some evidence that has been hinted at by the defense for Erik Menendez that he had conversations with Lyle Menendez regarding what actually transpired in relationship to the computer. So that aspect of it, no doubt, will be elicited by Erik Menendez during his testimony, and this is another facet of that. And
It's just the specific statements that Lyle Menendez made to Mr. Whitkin, not the fact that he had Mr. Whitkin come. Our jury knows that.
all right, well, to get the entirety of what occurred and to deal with the credibility of Lyle Menendez, this would certainly be relevant and probative evidence, and I don't see that there's any prejudicial impact on the defendant Erik Menendez. Therefore, the court would permit the examination before both juries. People have indicated they won't go into the bounce check before both juries, so that's how it will proceed. Anything else before we have the juries come in? All right, let's have both juries come in, please. Lyle Menendez is on the witness stand. You're still under oath. Would you state your name for the record, please?
Joseph Lyle Menendez.
And you may continue your direct examination.
Thank you. Mr. Menendez, after your parents died, did your relatives start arriving in town?
Yes.
And where do most of your relatives live?
New Jersey, most of them.
And some live in other states?
Florida and a few other states. Arizona.
And did they stay in the same location you stayed?
We all stayed at the Lodge Hotel at first.
And did you move to some other location?
And then we moved to the Bel Air Hotel.
Did all of your relatives move, or did just you and your brother move?
I don't think, just my brother and I moved, and where the family would meet and sort of gather sort of changed to that hotel, but I think they still had the rooms they reserved at the Bel Air, pretty sure.
And who made the decision that you should go to the Bel Air Hotel?
One of my dad's cousins.
And why did he want you to stay there?
I believe he thought it was more secure and more conducive to open family gatherings, since they did have a large room kind of separated from the other guests.
And several days after your relatives arrived, did you have a conversation with your Aunt Marta?
Yes.
And what is her relationship? She's your aunt. Whose sister is she?
My dad's sister.
And did that conversation concern the financial aspect of your mother and father's situation?
Yes.
And where did that conversation take place?
That took place at one of the hotels. I'm not sure if it was her room or my room.
Was she discussing the size of your parents' estate?
Yes, she had a whole list of
And,
papers and things to show us.
and did that discussion also concern whether there was any insurance?
Yes.
Now, when your Aunt Marta was telling you about the information about the estate, did you make any comment to her with regard to the will?
Yes, we told her.
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
What did you say?
Same objection.
Sustained.
Before your parents died, what did you believe with regard to whether you were in or out of the will?
We were out of the will.
And how is it that you came to believe that?
That's what my dad told me, that I was out of the will.
Did he explain to you why?
No, but I sort of realized it. He mentioned it every so often, and I realized it as we went along.
Why did you think you were? This is just something that you figured out on your own, something you
No,
believed?
this was things that he would say about my girlfriends and my girlfriend situations led me to believe he just didn't want them to get his money. And so I didn't see it as a permanent situation, just until he felt that I married properly.
And did he have more than one discussion with you about being out of the will?
There weren't really discussions. My dad would just say that if he was sarcastic and maybe even angry.
And over what period of time had he been telling you that you were out of the will, if you remember?
Since the beginning of '89, maybe even a little before.
And did you express this state of mind to your aunt?
Yes.
And did your aunt tell you something about an insurance policy with the company, with your dad's company?
Objection, hearsay.
State of mind again, Your Honor.
Objection sustained.
Did you have any information before your parents died with regard to a $5 million insurance policy that your father's company was to pay for him?
Yes.
And how is it that you had information about that policy?
Just through things that were said in the house. Mostly my mother arguing with him about the appointments that he continued to miss or cancel.
What did you believe about the $5 million insurance policy? Did you believe that it was in effect or not
At what time?
prior to your parents' death?
It wasn't in effect because he hadn't taken the physical.
And were there discussions in your home about why he hadn't taken the physical?
Yes.
And what were the reasons stated that why he hadn't taken the physical?
Objection, hearsay.
State of mind again, Your Honor.
Can you spell out what time frame you're talking about in these conversations, please?
Did your father have some health problems in January of 1989?
Yes.
What kind of health problems did he have?
He had some, I don't know if I'm using the right words, but heart palpitations of some sort in the night, and so to be safe, he checked into a hospital near Pico Boulevard, and I found out, I believe, the next day, which was Super Bowl, I guess Super Bowl Sunday. And so I was with some friends at the house, and then I left because I found out my dad was in the hospital, and I went and I spent the Super Bowl with him, and it was some sort of a heart trouble, which he was keeping secret.
Did he express to you why he wanted to keep it secret?
Yes, because...
State of mind again, Your Honor.
All right, it's not received for the truth of what was said, just to reflect the state of mind of the witness. And again, could you specify when this occurred?
After your father had these heart problems and was in the hospital, were you given some instructions with regard to whether this was to be talked about openly or not?
Yes, he was extremely concerned that it would get out that he may have some heart trouble, and the stock would drop in his company significantly, since the whole house of cards was held up by him, he felt, and were they to find out that the chairman, chief executive, had health problems, the stock would drop. And so I believe nobody at his company knew, maybe his secretary and just myself and Mom, Erik.
And was there any connection between these heart problems and him getting the insurance policy?
Yes, the only connection was that he felt that he wanted to give as much time as he could, a little more time. I guess they wanted him to take the physical in the spring when he was supposed to take it for the insurance policy, and he was putting it off and just wanted to let as much time go by as he could.
Is this what he was saying to you?
This is what he was saying to my mother when she was really pretty obsessively badgering him about the appointments that he was missing, and that I guess someone at the company was setting up for him, and he just wouldn't go.
So this was a topic of conversation on more than one occasion between your mother and father?
Yes.
And when your mother would talk to him about taking the physical and urging him to do so, would he use the health thing as a reason for not doing it? Or?
Yes. And he was a little suspicious of her.
How do you mean he was a little suspicious of her?
Because she was so insistent that he take the physical, and, she was unstable. And he was sarcastically implying that maybe, he was just, seemed to be implying that maybe he shouldn't take the physical if she wanted him to take the physical so bad.
Sort of joking with her about it?
Yeah.
And after your father died, did your Aunt Marta suggest to you that you should be able to get this insurance? That the company should pay off on this policy?
Yes, she said she was the one that arranged the insurance. Oh, you mean the $5 million?
Right.
She didn't seem to understand what I was trying to explain to her. She seemed to feel that the company should pay it anyway, since she said it was in the contract. Even though he didn't take the physical, who cares? He would have passed, and she should get it. So I told her I didn't think so.
So did she then continue negotiations with the company with regard to that?
Yes.
Lack of foundation.
Sustained, the answer stricken.
Did she report back to you that she was still attempting to get the company to pay off on that policy?
Yes.
And did she tell you about another insurance policy? One that she'd written for your dad?
Yes.
And did you know about that one before your parents died?
No.
And do you know what the amount was on that one?
Sustained.
after your parents died, did your Aunt Marta tell you how much that insurance policy was?
She did.
And how much was it?
I believe it was, between my brother and myself, a total of $650,000, I believe.
And had you ever heard about that policy before their death?
No.
You said that you believed that you were out of the will when your parents died. Is that correct?
Right.
Did your relatives find a will for your parents?
Yes, they did.
And was it a new will or one that had been made up some time ago?
No, it wasn't. Over 10 years old, I believe.
And did they continue looking for a newer will?
Yes, they also believed that there could be a new will, and so we were looking for a new will.
At some point, did you receive some information about some information in a computer that seemed to relate to a will?
Did I find some information?
Did you receive some? Did somebody tell you about
Yes.
that? And was this computer in your parents' bedroom?
That was my mother's IBM computer.
And did you have a computer of your own in the house?
Yes.
And what kind of computer did you have?
That was the Macintosh that I had bought at Princeton.
And when you bought the Macintosh at Princeton, who used it primarily?
Mostly my friends used it. It pretty much didn't get used, actually. But if someone wanted to do a paper and they knew how to use it, it was fine with me.
And did you ever use the IBM computer that was in your parents' bedroom?
I didn't know how to use it because you need to know the special. It seemed complicated.
Did your dad use it?
No, he didn't know how to use it either.
Who used it?
Mom had some knowledge on how to use it. Not a whole lot, but she was able to do some work with it.
And did you receive some information while you were still in California about efforts to pull information out of the computer, out of the IBM computer?
Yes.
All right, one step at a time. Objection overruled. Next one step.
Yes.
And your parents died on Sunday, is that correct?
Yes.
And when did you leave for New Jersey?
Friday, I believe.
Between that Friday, which was the 20th, that Sunday, which was the 20th, and the following Friday, is that when you received information about what was in the computer?
Yes.
And what information did you receive? What information did you have about who was looking in the computer?
Well, a bunch of my relatives. I know Carlos Baralt, the executor, was looking and was working on the computer. My Aunt Joan, my Aunt Pat, I believe my Aunt Terry, and a cousin of my dad's, Carlos Menendez. And there may have been probably my Uncle Brian also, actually. There may have been more, but I don't know.
So everybody was...
I spent a few hours checking all the files and going through it.
And were you given some information in terms of what they were able to find in the computer?
Yes.
And what were you told? State of mind again, Your Honor.
Could you be a little more specific as to when and where and who said this thing?
Between the Sunday your parents died and the Friday that you left for New Jersey, did you receive some information with regard to what your relatives had found in the computer?
Yes.
And do you remember exactly when that was?
That was during family discussions we had after they had looked through the computer, which was, I think it was later in the week, but it could have been as early as Wednesday. I'm not sure.
And did you receive this information when you were sitting with a group of people, or was it just one person talking to you?
It was just a group of people, and especially Carlos Menendez had a big interest. And, everybody had worked on it, the computer, and so it was being talked about, and I was there.
And what did they say about what they'd found in the computer?
That they had found basically that there was nothing in the computer of any interest other than these 3 entries.
And what were the 3 entries, if you remember?
My memory is it was Menendez, and then the word will, and then the word list.
And were these 3 entries the focal point of the interest of the relatives in terms of spending all of the time trying to get the information out of the computer?
That's what they were basically talking about, was those 3 entries, yeah.
And what did they tell you about those entries?
Just that they had found the 3 entries, at least those were the ones that they were discussing, and that there was nothing in the entries, that they had pulled up the files, and that they were basically completely empty, and it seemed like somebody at one point had been doing something with those entries, and I guess had either erased it or something had happened, because there were just like very little bytes under the entries.
All right, this conversation, again, is not received for the truth of the matter stated, just to reflect the state of mind of the witness.
Thank you. Was any discussion about whether, if there was a will in the computer, it would be a valid will?
Yes.
And this was still in California prior to you returning to New Jersey on Friday?
Yes.
And what was that discussion with regard to the validity of the will?
That was, essentially, I was just listening mostly to Carlos Baralt, who was the executor. He was the only one handling the affairs of the estate. And it was, he said that a will on a computer would not be valid whether they found one or not. And he said because there had to be a signature and witnesses, and that it was, basically he said that it was interesting, but that he wasn't going to waste any more time on it. And
were some arrangements made for someone else to see if they could retrieve the information?
yes,
Okay, and were those arrangements made while you were still in California or after you went to New Jersey, or do you know?
I'm not sure exactly when.
Okay. And what arrangements were you aware of at that time?
Well, fairly shortly after that, either in California or right when they got back, I believe. Somebody wanted an expert to check the computer more thoroughly, and it was Eileen's responsibility. She's a cousin of mine who works with IBM, to find somebody, she lives in New Jersey, but to find somebody in California who could come out inexpensively and just double check the computer, I guess.
Did you make any efforts before you left California to find out what was in the computer?
No.
And when you found out that Eileen was going to make some arrangements, did you talk to her about it or ask to be present?
No, I found out about the arrangements all in, I believe, the same conversation in New Jersey.
Okay.
And I don't know if the arrangements were made in California, but I found out about them in New Jersey.
And how is it that you found out that Eileen was going to have somebody come and look at the computer? Was there a discussion just with you and Eileen, or were there other people around?
No, there were. I believe we were at my Aunt Terry's house, and there was a big, Eileen was very upset, and there was a big problem, and there were basic discussion about the fact of how upset Eileen was that she had set up somebody to go look at the computer, and my dad's cousin had, behind her back, set up his own expert to look through the computer. And she had gone through all this trouble, and why was he doing that? And that's where I learned it for the first time.
And what's your dad's cousin's name?
Carlos Menendez.
And so was this a fairly big event in terms of her being upset? Was she making a
It was
big deal
fairly
of it?
big. My Aunt Terry and my Uncle Carlos, they were both the executors actually, stayed out of it completely because it was more a personal thing than anything that had to do with the estate.
Being personal in terms of Eileen being angry that
Right.
this had happened? And after you found out that Carlos Menendez had made some arrangements with regard to the will, did you do anything with regard to the computer?
Excuse me, with regard to the...
The computer. Did you do anything?
Yes.
What did you do?
Well, once I found out that Carlos had hired his own expert, I wanted to know why, and I was suspicious, so I believe I called my brother first, and talked to him about it briefly just to see if he knew anything, and he said, basically just verified that Carlos had his own expert set up to come that Friday, and I think this was a Wednesday, and that Friday, and that Erik was going to be there and let him in the house.
Was that a surprise to you?
Well, at that point, I knew from Eileen that that's basically what I had heard, but I got the details, I think, from Erik, and certainly a surprise to me. The whole thing was a surprise to me, actually.
And what did you think about it?
I thought that Carlos was maybe, up to something, was suspicious. I had known that my father didn't trust him, and I really didn't trust him. I didn't have anything against him, I just didn't know. So,
What did you think he might do?
well, I thought he might create something on the computer that would, I wasn't sure what he was going to do, whether he was going to try and write a will that wrote himself in or cause problems in some way like that. I wasn't sure what his intentions were. But I figured if he hired his own person after Eileen went through all this trouble and went through my brother, which I thought was not proper, he should have gotten the executor's permission to go to the house to look through my mother's computer, or at least got both our permission, and he didn't do that. So I thought something might be going on.
So did you fly to California?
Yes.
And did you hire Mr. Whitkin?
Yes.
And did you do what the receipt indicates, which is to ask him to recover files on a hard drive?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 64. Do you recognize this?
I believe so. It's the receipt from Howard.
Yeah. When he came to the house, did you let him in to look at the computer?
Yes.
And did you stay with him the whole time that he was pulling up whatever information was on the computer?
Not the whole time.
And did he tell you that there was anything in there? Did he tell you if there was anything in there?
He said that there was nothing in there. But
you-
just, there were computer-related things, but nothing that he could see that was personal or of any interest.
Did you ask him to erase whatever was on there?
I did ask him to erase it.
Did you ask him to erase it in a way that supposedly nobody could tell if it had been erased?
Yes.
Why did you do that?
I wanted him to erase it in a way that it would just look pretty much like nobody had been there at all, actually like nobody had been there at all if he could. And then I would, when Carlos's expert came the next day, I would see what he was up to. And if he came back and said, there was this, I found this on the computer, a letter from your dad saying that I should get this, or what, I wasn't sure. But then I would know that it wasn't true. And he said he felt he could erase it in a way that nobody would find out. so I told him to do that.
And did you subsequently have a discussion with Carlos Menendez about this whole situation?
Yes.
And did you express to him what your concerns had been?
Yes, he was angry that I had done that, and I was angry that he had sort of gone behind Eileen's back and through my brother and not consulted Carlos and I, and it was suspicious, and we had a discussion about it, and you know, I think we understood each other.
Your Honor, the next section I have is only in front of the Lyle Menendez jury. It's fairly brief, so
Okay, you can do it by now?
I think I can.
All right, and at this point, what we'll do is have the blue jury take an early break for lunch and come back at 1:30. Don't discuss this case with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it. Don't speculate as to what is going on in court while you're not here. You must make your decision based only on the evidence presented to you. Yes.
This section and the next section are only for Lyle Menendez's jury, so maybe if they came back a half hour later, we would be able to cover both of the sections.
Okay. All right, then we'll change that and excuse you until 2 o'clock, and we'll see the blue jury back here at 2 o'clock. All right, the blue jury has left. You may proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Menendez, did you spend a lot of money before your parents died?
Yes.
Did you spend significantly more money after your parents died?
Yes.
And did you buy 3 Rolex watches
Yes.
and a Porsche?
Yes.
Did you spend a lot of money on clothes?
Yes.
Your parents were in the process of buying you a condominium at the time they died, is that correct?
Right.
Did you make an offer on another condominium that was right nearby?
Yes.
And why were you going to buy? Did you actually make offers on 2 other condominiums?
Yes.
And why were you going to buy those 2 other condominiums?
Well, actually, the one was a condominium, and one was like a much larger place, like
Okay.
more like a patio home.
Okay.
And
What was your thought when you made the offer on the condominium?
well, I was going to go to Princeton, and the condominium that my parents bought was for that purpose, and we were really trying hard to get my brother into Princeton for that fall semester, and my Aunt Marta was arranging things, and everybody was trying to meet with the Princeton people, and I
Who
met
was
with...
that condominium going to be for?
That was for Erik.
And when you decided to make the offer on the patio home, who was going to live in that patio home?
Well, that was... I wasn't sure if Erik was going to be able to get in, and it turned out that they wouldn't let him in for that semester. And in the event that he didn't get in, I wanted to make an offer on this patio home, because then he was going to maybe play tennis then at that point and travel, and I wanted a place big enough for, I was going to be living in Princeton, and big enough for he and his coach, when they came into town, that they could stay in the house with me rather than have these, maintain a separate condominium when he would be just flying in every once in a while.
Did you ever end up buying either one of those?
No.
And the one that did close was the one that your parents were in the process of buying when they died, is that correct?
Right, I finished the sale of that one.
And did you also borrow money from the estate to buy a restaurant?
Yes.
And when was that?
The restaurant was purchased at the end of January.
Why did you buy that? Or why did you invest in that?
Basically, I was just very unsure as to what was going on in my life at that point, whether I wanted to go back to school, since I wasn't able to start the first semester, whether I wanted to come in midterm or whether I was going to go on the tour and play with Erik. And there was expectations of that, and I was sort of all over the place. And in talking with my uncles, basically this feeling that I should do something and focus on something, and I picked that.
Do you today have any of the watches?
No.
Do you have the Porsche?
No.
Do you own any condos?
No.
What happened to the restaurant?
Just gave it back to the person I bought it for.
After your parents died, you hired bodyguards.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Right.
Where was it that you first saw bodyguards after your parents died?
First saw bodyguards, the company hired them to guard the Beverly Hills house.
What did you think about that?
That they had, that they knew about my dad's connections or had more details as to my dad's connections, and had some concern that somebody might want to go back to the house to get something. So they were protecting the house pretty vigorously. I mean, the guards were armed and so on.
And did you hire bodyguards after that, after seeing the guards at the house, or before?
No, once I saw the series of things, once I saw the guards at the house, and from watching TV programs, I got nervous and just decided to hire some guards.
What about the TV programs that you watched made you nervous?
Well, there was just program after program about my dad's having Mafia connections, and that why this could be a Mafia hit. And, they would, I remember seeing it could have been a hard copy or one of those shows about this Mafia family and where my dad might have fit in, and the different things I knew about his business deals in the past that were shady, and just programs like that. And it just made me nervous. And then there was a release from the police, although detectives always said it was actually the coroner. But it seemed like the police releasing that it was a mob hit, and seemed like that's where the investigation would go.
But you knew the Mafia hadn't killed your parents.
Right.
Right? So why did it frighten you that there was all this coverage about it being a mob hit?
Because nobody else knew that it wasn't the Mafia, and my concern was that whatever my dad's connections were, and I really didn't have as many details as people might have thought, that I was going to be helping the police and was furthering the investigation and giving up information. And I just felt that if my dad was doing something real illegal, or if he had some connection that was concerned about being exposed, they might think the sons were just giving it all up to find out who killed their parents. And I didn't want to give that impression, and I didn't want anything to happen to Erik and I because of that reason. So I hired the guards, at least in New Jersey.
How long did you have them?
About 2 weeks or so, just for a short period of time, to see if anything would happen.
Did you, during that period of time, believe that you were followed ever?
We were being followed.
How do you know you were being followed?
Because the limo, the bodyguard driver, told me that we were being followed. And
Did you believe him?
yes. And then I believe one of the main bodyguards checked up on it and said it may be the FBI following me. He had a friend in the FBI, and that it might be the FBI.
Could you think of any reason why the FBI would be following you?
No. I don't think he believed that too much either.
At some point, did you ask Glenn Stevens to help you out with regard to contacting the Mafia?
Yes.
Why did you ask Glenn Stevens to help you in that regard?
Because his family actually had Mafia connections, and
How did you know that?
because he bragged about it, and he actually did. They did actually have Mafia connections,
How do you know that?
because we went up and met with one of the people who was supposedly in the mob and ran the security company in New York. Certainly looked like he was in the mob, and
Let me
was-
stop you. Did you talk to Glenn Stevens about your concerns about the Mafia?
yes,
And did he offer to set up a meeting for you?
yes,
And did he tell you something about who you would be meeting with?
yes.
And what did he tell you about the person you would be meeting with?
That he was a member of a crime family in New York, and that he would be a good person if I had concerns to talk to, since his father knew him very well.
And did you meet with this person?
Yes,
Do you remember his name?
yes.
What's his name?
His name is Tony Negri.
And where did this meeting take place?
At Anthony Negri's office in New York. And then we went out to a restaurant.
And did you tell him of your concerns?
Yes, I met with Glenn, and I went up there. I believe it was just Glenn and I. And at some point I asked to speak with him privately so I could discuss this with him. And I told him my concern, and that my brother and I were not interested in finding out who had killed my parents, and if he could maybe get the word out that we weren't helping in any police investigations, and if anybody was still nervous about that, whatever my dad was involved in, that we didn't want to know, and we had no concern for that. And
Did you tell him you had killed your parents?
no,
When you asked him to get the word out, I mean, did he tell you he would, or tell you he couldn't, or what did he tell you?
he told me that he would.
Did you feel
And-
better after that?
I felt better, and then we met again, and he told me that I had nothing to worry about.
Your Honor, if we could break at that point.
All right, we'll resume at 1:30, ladies and gentlemen. Don't discuss this case with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it. And we'll see you back here at 1:30. And we'll now resume with the direct examination of the defendant, Lyle Menendez, before the Lyle Menendez jury only. You may continue.
Mr. Menendez, I believe you'd indicated that the first girlfriend you had was a young woman named Stacy Feldman. Is that correct?
Right,
And after you broke up with Stacy, the next girlfriend you had was Jamie Pisarcik. Is that correct?
right.
And when did you start going with Ms. Pisarcik?
At the end of the fall of '86.
And was she your girlfriend on and off for a period of time?
Yes.
And did you break up with her, or did she break up with you, rather, in February of 1989, the spring of '89?
In February of 1989.
89. In this,
She broke up with me in February of '89, and then, okay.
and did you resume the relationship shortly after your parents died?
Yes,
In fact, did she attend the memorial service in New Jersey?
yes,
And was she your girlfriend at the time you were arrested?
no,
Did you resume the relationship with her after you were arrested?
it took a little while, but basically we became boyfriend and girlfriend again.
So while you were in jail, was she visiting you?
She visited me immediately, like the day after I got arrested.
And was she coming to visit you regularly?
Yes.
How often was she coming to visit you?
Probably about 4 times a week or more. I mean, pretty often.
And what is entailed in someone coming to visit you at the jail? Is that just easy? You make an appointment and you walk in, or is it difficult?
No, it's very difficult. And it's pretty oppressive, I think. So it's not an enjoyable experience for the most part. I mean, hopefully the visit is, but going and leaving is difficult.
And was she coming to court appearances for you? Was she coming to court when you went to court?
She was coming to court appearances, the ones she could. I mean, sometimes she was working.
Did she at some point begin to ask you about whether you had in fact killed your parents?
She never asked me until many months after I was arrested. She started to wonder, and she wanted to know, and then she started to really press me that she needed to know.
And did you decide to tell her?
Yes.
Was this in the fall of '90?
Yes.
Do you remember the exact date?
Not the exact date, but I believe it was in the fall.
And how is it that you told her?
I decided to write out, what had happened, and just essentially what had happened and why and some of the issues.
Why did you decide to tell her?
Because I didn't think it was fair with her coming down to the jail continually, and she had never asked me why, and this was obviously a very difficult thing to talk to her about, and I just felt like our relationship in the jail was getting to a point where it would be the right thing to do, and I was feeling very guilty, and she was pressing me to know, and I could have said, my attorneys have said not to talk to anybody, which they had, but with her being my girlfriend, I felt I should anyway.
So you said you wrote a letter?
Yes.
A long letter or a short letter or what?
Several pages, pretty long.
And in that letter, did you tell her that you had killed your parents?
Yes.
And in that letter, did you explain what had happened?
Yes.
And did you explain to her information about your background with your parents?
Yes.
Did you tell her that Erik had been molested by your father?
Yes.
Did you tell her that you had been molested by your mother?
Yes.
Did you tell her that you'd been molested by your father?
No.
Why?
I just couldn't tell her that.
Why?
I was just something I could talk to her about my mom, but there were lots of reasons, but mostly because I was just ashamed, and I hadn't really decided. In fact, I had sort of in my own mind.
Let me go back. Why were you ashamed?
I don't know why. I just felt like that was not something. I mean, I knew that Erik had talked to people about it, but I wasn't going to say what happened to me. And
Why not?
I just... I don't know, it wasn't really, I mean, it was embarrassing, but it was really more than that. I just didn't want to say that my dad did those things. I didn't want to say the things he did to me. And
Why? Why didn't you want to say what your dad had done to you?
Because I was ashamed.
Were you concerned about your father?
I just didn't think that I could go through that. One problem was I felt, see, this was Jamie. I mean, there were two problems. One was Jamie herself being my girlfriend, and I really felt concerned that she would feel differently about me and it would affect our relationship if I revealed this to her. And, talking about what happened with my mother was just not the same. I didn't think she would see it the same. And, but really, at that point in time, there was a whole other issue of whether I would talk about this to anybody. And if I was asked to here, and I never wanted to have to do what I did here. And it's been very depressing to have to do that. And I've felt drained since I've done it, and I felt like I betrayed my dad to some extent. There were a lot of things going on in my mind. I had a good relationship with my grandmother, and I didn't want her to hear those things from me.
Your grandmother, you mean your father's mother?
Right.
You said you felt like you betrayed your father. Why is it a betrayal of your father?
It just feels that way. I don't know why.
Do you want people to think well of your father?
I would have liked that.
Why, after all he did to you, do you want people to think well of your father?
I just missed the connection I had with him, and I loved him, and I felt, I guess, very guilty. And seeing my grandmother and people hurt.
Do you feel like you've betrayed him now by the things you've told about him here in court?
I have.
How
I
do you
have
feel?
betrayed him.
How do you feel about having betrayed him?
Just depressed. And wishing that I don't know. Sorry.
So in the letter, you didn't tell her about your father, is that right?
No.
Did you tell her about the fear?
Yes.
What did she say about the fear and the fight before? Did you tell her about that?
Yes, I wrote everything.
What did she say about that?
What did who say about it?
What did Jamie say about the fear and the fight?
Well, we didn't get that far.
What do you
Because
mean?
as soon as she read, at some point, she just got very angry. Basically about what I was saying happened to my brother. She didn't believe it. She didn't. I don't know if she was angry about just hearing that I was involved, and she was, I was crying, and she was very upset, and I believe crying, and she was sad, but she was angry. She didn't want to believe that. She didn't want to believe those things. She hadn't seen it herself, she said, and we basically, she didn't want to read anymore.
Did you have another conversation with her?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd like to play the tape at this point in time.
Is this tape an exhibit?
Yes, we mark it as the next one.
247.
And we have transcripts also, Your Honor. Could we mark those as
248.
48? I believe that they were distributing them now. Your Honor, I believe with the stipulation, this is the voice of Jamie Pisarcik?
Yes, and also there was stipulation that the court reporter did not transcribe this.
That's correct.
Previous to, or prior to him telling me that, holding the letter up, I guess he was kind of, working on his own defense type thing. And, he had asked me to watch a movie called At Close Range. And that is what in that movie there was a scene where that is what they wanted me to say. He and his lawyer, which was Joel at the time. This is what Lyle was saying. I've never spoken to Joel.
You're talking about Joel now?
Joel had wanted me to say happened to me.
Well, what happens at Close Range?
I had seen the movie before. I did not go home and watch it. I have not seen it. But in that movie, the father, I guess, makes passes, or I don't believe he rapes the one character, Sean Penn's girlfriend. He had asked me to say that that's what had happened. And
Lyle asked you to
yes.
say that to him?
But Jose had made a pass that you just said in the movie?
Yes.
And you're going to say something about that?
And that there was going to be a large sum of money placed in my bank account.
Who told you that?
Lyle said that.
So it wasn't a threat, it was a bribe?
It was a bribe, I guess. And that I just said, this is one of the things that started me wondering about the whole thing. But I just said if that ever happened, I'd go right to the police. And nothing was ever said after that. There was no money put in my bank account. He said, that's what I thought you'd say, and that's what I told Joel you'd say. He would never do that.
Did you get the idea that his attorney had helped him cook up this thing? Or did you ever talk to him?
No.
Okay, so you never spoke to Joe.
So I don't know. You don't know. This is coming straight from Lyle.
So what he wanted you to say was not the truth. Is that accurate to say?
Yes, I supposed to say Mr. Menendez never said anything like that towards me.
Was this at the same time that he had held up the letter?
No, this is previous.
Previous to that?
Yeah. Several weeks or so.
But you just indicated that was sort of what started you thinking that you wanted.
Questioning.
Okay.
Was there any other requests made like that from that point until the point that he held up the letter?
No, that was it. And he knew how I felt about it. And that was it. Now,
Mr. Menendez, is that essentially the way the conversation went?
Yes.
Your Honor, the remainder of the materials in front of both juries. Oh, give the instruction. Yes, please.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you are instructed that the reference just made to a lawyer named Joel does not refer to any lawyer now representing Lyle Menendez, and you are not to infer therefrom any impropriety by present counsel for either Lyle or Erik Menendez. All right? And are you now ready to have the other jury come in as well?
I am, Your Honor.
Okay, do we have everybody here?
We have some in here and some outside.
Okay, let's make sure we have everybody, and if we do, then we'll have them all come in.
Mr. Menendez, on October 31st, 1989, did you receive a telephone call from Dr. Oziel?
Yes.
Where were you?
It's in the house in Beverly Hills.
And what did Dr. Oziel say to you? Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me, I have to relocate. Okay. What did Dr. Oziel say to you?
He said that he had my brother in his office and that my brother had told him everything.
What did you say?
I believe I asked him what he meant by that, and he just said he didn't want to talk about it on the phone, I should come over.
Did you go over?
Yeah, he sounded very nervous and tense, and so I had a good feeling of what exactly they had talked about, so I definitely went over.
What did you think they had talked about?
I figured my brother had told him that what happened on Sunday, and I wasn't sure exactly what, but something to that effect, certainly that we were involved and that they might have talked about turning ourselves into the police or something to that effect.
So you drove over there? Is that correct?
I drove over, yeah.
How long did it take you to get there?
Just a couple minutes.
And how were you feeling when you walked into the office?
Nervous and afraid that my brother may have decided that we should turn ourselves into the police, and that Oziel, who I knew from previous occasions, had this information.
Did you trust Dr. Oziel?
No.
Were you upset with your brother?
Yes, I was very upset.
So from before you even walked into the office, did you think you knew what had happened?
I was not sure what had happened, and I didn't want to know what had happened until I heard what it was that they wanted to do.
What happened when you walked in the office?
I walked in and I sat down, and in the chair closest to his desk. And
How did he seem? How did Dr. Oziel seem?
he seemed very nervous.
How did your brother seem?
He seemed even worse, even more nervous, and just agitated, and I guess wondering what I was going to think. So I sat down, and Oziel wanted to tell me what had been said.
What did you say?
I told him that I didn't want to hear whatever my brother had told him,
Why?
because I wanted to talk to Erik first, and I didn't know if they were, basically because I didn't know if he was going to go to the police or what they had decided together, that they had now called me and wanted me to agree to turn myself in, and I just felt that talking to Dr. Oziel at that point wasn't a good idea. I didn't want to do that.
So what did you do?
I just stayed. didn't want to leave either. My brother was involved at this point, and I just basically wanted to hear what Dr. Oziel had to say.
Did you say anything to your brother?
At some point, my brother and I got into an argument, and I started shouting at my brother, basically. And
What were you saying to him?
I was upset that I was having this conversation with Oziel, and at some point I expressed that I felt like my brother had in some way trusted Dr. Oziel more than me, and why did he go to Dr. Oziel and not me first? Because Dr. Oziel had said that Erik was suicidal and had been having a lot of emotional problems and might commit suicide, and that's why he came to him. And I felt like he should have come to me, and I felt hurt just to a large degree, and sort of betrayed by the fact that they had sort of gotten together and talked about things, and I had not had a discussion with my brother like this, really. We had not been able to talk about it. And so I was, in saying that to Dr. Oziel, my brother got very, I don't know if upset's the right word, but he was, in saying those things and not wanting to talk about what he had talked to Dr. Oziel about, he was feeling, I guess you could use the word upset. It wasn't that he was angry, but he was just very unhappy about that.
Were you angry?
I was angry.
Were you angry with your brother?
I was angry with him.
Were you frightened?
Of the situation, yes.
Were you emotional?
It was a very intense meeting, with me yelling at my brother, Oziel telling me that I seemed menacing to him, and me sort of feeling cornered, partly my own fault, because I didn't want to go and talk to them about what they wanted to talk about, yet I really couldn't leave. And
Why didn't you want to talk about what they wanted? First of all, what did they want to talk about?
well, just initially when I came in, Dr. Oziel wanted to tell me everything that he and Dr. Oziel, my brother and Dr. Oziel, had discussed, and I didn't want to hear it. And until I heard from my brother first. And essentially I just wanted to leave with my brother.
Did Dr. Oziel say anything to you about confidentiality?
Yes.
What did he say?
Well, he said that I seemed menacing to him, and that that there was potential confidentiality, but that if somebody threatened him, or if he felt threatened, that there would not be confidentiality, and he could just go to the police and with the information he had. And actually, I believe he said that he would be obligated to go, but I'm not positive. But he said that if he felt threatened, it wouldn't be confidential, but that there was supposed to be confidentiality, and if he wasn't threatened, then this would be confidential, and he couldn't go to the police even if he wanted to. And this long discussion about narrative, more like, about that.
Did you want him to go to the police?
No, I told him that that's exactly what I was afraid he was going to do.
Did you want him to feel threatened?
No, I wanted him to feel the opposite.
Why?
Because of what he just told me.
During the time that you were yelling at your brother and expressing how you felt about him having told this secret, how was your brother reacting?
He was crying, and he was sort of becoming hysterical, and at some point ran out of the room.
And what did you do when he ran out of the room?
I went to follow him.
What did Dr. Oziel do?
He wanted me to stay.
Why did he want you to stay?
Well, at some point he told me he wanted me to either there or in the hallway. I confuse the area sometimes, but that he didn't feel comfortable with me leaving and the session ending that way, with Erik hysterical, and he told me that he felt threatened by my demeanor and that I had seemed menacing to him, and that he just felt very uncomfortable and wanted me to stay, at least, since my brother was clearly not going to stay. And I told him that I needed to take care of my brother, and I wanted to just talk to my brother first, and then we could come back.
Were you very firm about that, about wanting to take care of your brother?
Yes, and it was clear that that's what I was going to do. I was like leaving, and we were kind of like, he was kind of like following me. And again, I'm not sure if he followed us all the way outside, so this could have happened right outside or upstairs. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that I said goodbye to him in the hallway, like by where the elevators are. But I believe then he followed me anyway, downstairs, still saying that he felt uncomfortable and wanted me to go back upstairs with him, and me telling him no, and then we arranged that we would meet again.
Where did you go when you got downstairs?
We went, my brother was leaving. He got in his Jeep to leave. And I was trying to get my brother to relax, and while trying to get Oziel sort of to relax at the same time, and just tell him we'd come back. And I just didn't want to deal with Dr. Oziel. I wanted to talk to my brother, and he was sort of hysterical and ready to drive away. So at some point Oziel said okay, and I quickly just sort of, I believe he said we'd see him whenever the date was, November 2nd or something, but I'm not positive. He may have said, I'll call you, or something like that. But we arranged to meet again. I agreed I would with Erik, and he went back upstairs.
Dr. Oziel went back upstairs? Is that yes?
Yes.
What condition was your brother in at that point?
He was crying, pretty frantic, upset with me.
Why was he upset with you?
For saying that that going to Dr. Oziel had been sort of a betrayal of our trust, and that I believe I said something upstairs about how much could he love me if he trusts Dr. Oziel more than his own brother when he's suicidal and so on. And so it was pretty intense for him, and I think he was upset, and I should not have said the things I said.
When you got to the Jeep, did you continue telling him that you thought that he was disloyal, or what were you
We didn't talk at the Jeep, really. He wanted to leave, and so he left, and I told him I'd talk to him at the house.
Did you go back to the house?
Yes.
And when you got back to the house, did you talk about what happened?
Yes.
And did he tell you what had happened?
I asked him once he had calmed down, and just don't remember the conversation completely, but basically just asked him what he had said. At that point I wanted to know what he had told Dr. Oziel, and he said that he had told him that we did it, and that nobody, I believe he said that nobody else knew that he had said this to Dr. Oziel, and that he was feeling very depressed and very suicidal, and that he couldn't come to me, that I was sort of unstable and changing my mind as to whether I wanted to play tennis or go to school or business, and that
let me ask you, did he give you the details of what he said to Dr. Oziel?
No, and I believe he said he did not give him, that he said he did not, he told him he didn't know why it happened.
Did you talk about going back to Dr. Oziel? Did you talk with your brother about going back to Dr. Oziel?
Well, we talked about whether we should go back or not.
And was a decision made as to whether you would go back?
Yes, we decided that we should definitely go back.
And why did you decide to go back?
Well, it was either never talk to him again and not go back and not have any more contact with him, or go back. And since he had felt threatened by me and he had said this thing about confidentiality, I was very concerned that he was going to go to the police, especially if we didn't go back and just not return his calls or whatever. So my brother and I decided that it was definitely better to go back and try to just get him to relax and express to him that there was no problem, and basically see what Oziel wanted to do and feel him out and just sort of go with the flow and try to get him. The main thing was to just get him to relax so that he didn't run to the police. And so
Did you make some decisions yourself about what you were going to talk to him about?
Yes.
And what decisions did you make about what you were going to talk to him about?
What decisions did I make myself?
Yes.
Well, Erik had not talked to him about what had happened with Dad, and I certainly wasn't going to talk about it, and I felt that we shouldn't talk about it, that I just didn't want to, and I was glad that he didn't and that we shouldn't. And I actually didn't feel we should talk about anything, as little as possible, partly in case he did go to the police, but mostly just didn't want to talk to him about it. And Erik had said to him that he didn't know why, and that Oziel seemed to think he could figure out why, and just go back and, from what I knew of Oziel, I figured he would do a good job figuring it out, and we would talk about, he knew about my relationship between my parents somewhat, my family a little bit, and we would talk about that. And assuming that things were going well, we could just sort of continue to see him.
Were you going to talk about the facts of the killings themselves?
No, because then we would have to talk about why, and we didn't want to do that. And so we just weren't going to volunteer it at this point since Erik hadn't.
Did you go back to him then on November the 2nd?
Yes.
And Dr. Oziel said that he had told you both that he could be helpful to you in terms of describing the family constellation. That's what he's testified to here. Did he
Right.
say something like that to you?
I think that's exactly what he said.
And what did that mean to you in describing the family constellation?
Just talking about the emotions involved in the family, the personality of my dad, my mom, the interaction in the family, and the emotions that could conceivably have led to something like this, and maybe figure out why this happened.
Were you willing to talk about those things with him?
Yes.
Now, when you went in on November the 2nd, can you describe for us how the session was conducted?
Basically, like a regular therapy session, sitting down, and him in his chair, and basically we talked about the family, like he said, the family constellation, and he would give his impressions from what he knew already and what he felt could have been going on that might lead to something like this. And he would sort of tell you, you would give some responses, and he would kind of tell you how he felt that you feel, and what you were feeling and what you might have been feeling before, and that could have led to this. And basically just talk about like the family dynamic, as he put it. And
Were you volunteering a lot of information?
no, we were not volunteering information, very little.
So you said that Dr. Oziel would tell you what he thought you were thinking at the time, that type of thing?
Yeah, he talks a lot, and he just he rambled on about what it was he felt was going on, and basically knew a lot more about my dad. My mom's a very secretive person. He didn't have a good understanding of that, and I didn't want to talk about it. But essentially, basically, the only thing that was discussed about her was that she was depressed, which he knew at some point in her life, and might even have been suicidal. And we may have told him that. And
Let me ask you, when he would give you these theories about what you were thinking or how you were feeling, was he right some of the times?
yes,
Was he wrong some of the times?
sometimes he was pretty far off base, but
Would you tell him when he was right? Would you say, yeah, that's the way we felt, or you were right about that?
sometimes if he asked us, we would tell him almost always yes.
What about
A
when
lot
he
of
was-
times he didn't. He believed that we didn't really know exactly how we felt.
How do you know he believed that?
Well, partly because we were telling him we didn't know why this had happened, and so he was he accepted that as, that we sort of like, of course you don't know why, and there's just all these things going on in your family and the way you were brought up and in your mind, and just felt that he could piece it together through figuring out what was going on between everybody, and my mom's depression, my dad's controlling nature, and maybe he suggested that down the road we might be able to figure this out, get it out through hypnosis or get it out through some way. So a lot of times he didn't think we knew exactly how we felt.
So did you agree with him generally, with whatever conclusions he came up with about your family? Or would you tell him it's wrong?
No, I would basically agree. He would say it in a way that you just agreed, and he had a pretty good understanding of some of the issues, and so we stayed pretty much among those issues.
Were you eager to tell him a lot of things about your family?
Well, we knew what we didn't want to talk about, and I basically didn't want to tell him anything about my family if I could help it. I didn't want to be there. But part of the problem was, at least for me, was my brother was suicidal and depressed. And Oziel would say some things that made Erik feel better, like when he said that my mom was so depressed she would have wanted to be killed, and we'd probably done her a favor, he said. And we were both very impressed about my mom's death, and that made Erik feel better. And so those were things where he was not really correct, insofar that I don't think my mom was depressed to that point and suicidal when she died, but it made Erik feel better, so I just sort of agreed. So there were things like that he would say.
Dr. Oziel said that he told you that he had put tapes in safety deposit boxes. Is that correct?
Yes.
And did he tell you about having done that before for other patients or with other patients, that he'd put tapes in safety deposit boxes?
Yes.
What did he tell you in that regard?
For the hitman, he said he treated a hitman, and with certain situations, basically, I guess, that involved knowing about people that had died, he would take certain precautions, and that was basically taping notes of his dictation and putting them in safety deposit boxes, and that's what he said he did with us.
And did you believe that he had done that?
Yes.
Dr. Oziel said that when you came in on November the 2nd, that you said that you and Erik had sat in the Jeep laughing and talking about killing him, that you told him that you and Erik had had this conversation in the Jeep.
Right.
You remember him testifying to that?
Yes.
Was that true? Had you and your brother sat in the Jeep and talked about killing Dr. Oziel?
No, we didn't, and but we did discuss that because he felt that he said that.
Let me stop you. First, did you have the discussion in the Jeep?
No, we never had any discussion in the Jeep.
Was your brother in a joking mood in the Jeep after
No, he
the
was.
October 31st
He
session?
ran out of the room, ran down. He was hysterical. He was trying to get the Jeep started, and he wouldn't wait around to talk. I just told him we'd talk at home, and he took off.
Did this conversation come up with Dr. Oziel on November 2nd? Was there some conversation about you and your brother sitting in the Jeep and plotting his murder?
Yes. He said that in talking about how, basically at the beginning of the session when he was saying that he was not happy with the way that the last session ended, that he had felt threatened by, basically by me, my behavior and the way I was looking at him and so on. That he had had this image after it was over that we were in the Jeep, sitting down in the Jeep plotting to kill him. And I told him we hadn't had any discussion in the Jeep and that was ridiculous and that we weren't doing that. And he was basically joking, but he also seemed concerned.
Did he still seem nervous?
Yes.
Was that of some concern to you?
It
That he was nervous?
Great concern to me.
Why?
Because we were there, that's basically why we were there, because we knew he was concerned and we didn't want him to go to the police. And he was saying that he could do that since he had felt threatened.
And when he told you about, wondering if you were sitting in the Jeep plotting to kill him, he said that you said something like it wouldn't look too good if he disappeared. Remember him testifying to that?
Yes, I remember that.
Did you say that?
No.
He testified that there was a discussion in which there was a discussion about whether somebody was willing to live in fear. And Dr. Oziel said that he wasn't willing to live in fear, and he said that you said, neither did my father. Now, was there any discussion about living in fear with Dr. Oziel? Do you remember any discussion of that nature?
Yes.
And what was that discussion, as you remember it?
That was in talking about my dad's personality and the fact, and I was expressing that my dad was a fearless person, and that there had been times when he had intense negotiations with essentially gangster-connected people like Barry Gordy and so on, that he wasn't afraid by any of the threats that he would get from time to time, that he didn't choose to live his life in fear. And that's something that I often said to people, that my dad never chose to live in fear and that he was essentially fearless. And I think I told that to Detective Zoller too.
Did Dr. Oziel tell you that he was going to try to work with you to try to resolve whatever issues you had emotionally that had led you to commit the crimes? Remember him saying something like that?
Yes.
And was that what the purpose of all of this was, of meeting with him?
Yes.
From his perspective?
Yes.
There can cause for speculation as to his perspective.
I'll restate the question, please.
Is that what he indicated
Yes.
his perspective was?
Right.
And did you tell him that you were in agreement with that?
That I was in agreement with what?
With the idea of trying to figure out what had caused you to commit the crimes. Did you tell him that you were there to work on that with him?
Yes.
Dr. Oziel said that they had a conversation, that he had a conversation with you and your brother with regard to hating your father and why you had to kill him. Do you remember him testifying to that?
Hating my father and why I had to kill him?
Dr. Oziel testified that you and your brother said that you'd hated your father and told him why you had to kill him. Do you remember having a discussion with regard to hating your father?
I believe that I said that I hated him for dying, and that there were times that I hated him for some of the things he did to my mom.
What did you mean you hated your father for dying?
Well, for a long period of time I was, it sounds bad, but I felt like it was my dad's fault that this had happened, and that my life was sort of a shambles because of it, and that my brother was sort of lost and depressed and suicidal, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, and just incredible pain and guilt, and blame my dad essentially.
Did you
for
know?
letting it get to that point, and so I was angry with him. I don't know how to better describe it. That's basically what I was feeling.
Did you know that was irrational when you felt that way? Or did you believe, when you had these feelings, I mean, at some level, did you know that didn't make any sense?
I knew that, yes, because obviously I'd killed him, but I'm not sure that it, none of it made a lot of sense to me, but that's definitely what I was feeling, and I don't know how else to describe it.
Did you think your life was better or worse after your parents died?
It was much worse to me. I was depressed on and off, and sort of feeling lost all the way up to the moment I got arrested. It was incredibly different. I had lost. I felt very lost, and really from the moment the police left the house. They didn't leave any instructions as to what we should do, and we didn't know until relatives started arriving immediately and taking over. So I had no idea what to do. Didn't know how to pay bills, didn't know anything, and just kind of feeling like this incredible pressure and all the fear and everything that was going on, and then suddenly it was over. My parents were taken away, and it was just my brother and I. And we never got our act together in any way up until the time we got arrested. And it wasn't too long after that the thing with Oziel started, and that was a lot of stress, pressure, and I was sort of being pulled in so many different directions. You wish you could go back to just being at the condo and at school and everything the same as it was, although it had not been great. It had been better than it had ever been for me, at least in my life. On the other hand, my brother's situation was not tolerable. and his life was a wreck. So for him, maybe it was better, although it certainly didn't seem like it.
You say it didn't seem like it, you mean because of how he acted?
Yes.
How did he act? After your parents died, how did your brother act?
Suicidal, depressed, crying on and off.
Dr. Oziel testified that you and your brother told him that you felt you had to kill your father because he was constantly ridiculing you, putting you down, controlling your every activity, controlling you in every way, that he made you to feel not adequate, that he made you feel inferior, that he dominated him, that you knew you couldn't please him. Do you remember him testifying to all those things?
Yes.
And were those things discussed with Dr. Oziel?
Yes.
And did you volunteer that information, or did your brother, or where did it come from?
We all talked about it, but those were things that Oziel felt he knew well, and could talk about at length, and did. And essentially, I agreed with him that those things, my dad had those characteristics, and the relationship was often like that, although really not at the end. But he certainly had those characteristics.
Dr. Oziel testified that you said you wanted to write a book about your father, you and your brother.
Yes,
Did that conversation take place?
Yes.
Did you tell him? Did you and your brother tell him you wanted to write a book about him?
Yes.
And did you want to?
Yes.
Why?
My brother and I talked about the fact that my dad was, and we were trying, the family was completely focused on the good things they remembered about my parents, especially my dad, with the success and the sort of rags to riches story. And there was a lot of pain and feeling from my grandmother there, and I was getting the sense in the community that this was sort of a loss for the Cuban community, that he would have gone on to be senator and this greatness. And my brother and I talked about making a book that would be about all the great things he had achieved, and that everybody would appreciate that, and I thought that would be a great idea, so I wanted to do that.
Why did you want to write a book praising your dad after the things he had done to you?
So I just, for those reasons I said, I just admired his success, and I felt like there were a lot of people in the whole Cuban community in Miami and so on that were admiring the sort of myth of my father, and just wanting to preserve that. And my own feeling of the guilt, which just seemed to grow with myself and I think with Erik, as relatives continued to talk about how great my dad was. And also, some of them had a very big misconception as to the family and the image of the family and the relationship between my mom and dad. And I remember my Uncle Brian talking about it was like a storybook romance and how great the relationship was, and which of course wasn't true, and so those things were making me feel guilty. So
did you tell people when they talked about what a great relationship your parents had? Did you tell them about the affairs and what your mom's condition had been like?
No, I mean, occasionally I would say a few things so they'd get a little better perspective, like Carlos Menendez and that talk I had with him at the Hyatt about the computer. I mentioned to him that my dad had had affairs and the marriage was really not so good. And the sense I got was that he hadn't really known that.
You told us that there had been this discussion by Dr. Oziel that your mother was suicidal and that what you had done was really putting her out of her misery. Remember Dr. Oziel testifying about that?
Well, I believe he said that we had done her a favor.
Was that what you said or Erik said, or is that what Dr. Oziel said?
No, that's what he said. I never said that, and but it did make Erik feel better, and so I agreed. And I guess there might have been some further discussion that putting her out of her misery or something like that. I don't. It's possible.
Dr. Oziel also testified that you said that the reason that she was killed is because she was a witness, and you couldn't think of any way to kill your father without killing her. Do you remember him testifying to that?
Yes.
Did either you or your brother ever say that?
No. We didn't say that, and that doesn't make any sense.
Why doesn't it make any sense?
Well, just that there would, if my father had been just the statement that there would be no way to kill my father without killing my mother, it really doesn't make any sense because my dad traveled constantly, and I was with him alone in New Jersey all the time, and alone with him many different places on the way to tennis practices and different things. And that whole thing that Oziel was talking about does not make any sense to me.
Dr. Oziel said that you had told him that you had this perfect plan that you couldn't deviate from. Do you remember him testifying to that?
Yes.
Did you tell him you had this perfect plan?
No.
Did you have a plan?
No. And we never discussed with Oziel anything surrounding what happened or what happened as far as the details of it or any of that. And in fact, the only thing we discussed was some of the aftermath and just sort of how completely chaotic it was and how we had expected to get caught and go to jail, or the police would arrest us, and that had not happened. And him sort of agreeing.
So when you saw him on October 31st and then you were there with your brother on November 2nd, you didn't discuss any details of how your parents had actually died. Is that correct?
No.
This was all of the session directed at figuring out the reasons why it had happened rather than how it had happened?
Right. He was trying to figure out, he was sort of fishing for and trying to figure out the reasons why, since my brother had told him he didn't know why, and I was not helping and saying I didn't know why either. And he felt that he could figure it out, and basically that's what we were talking about. And I didn't feel that I could, if we got anywhere near the details, we would have to tell him why and the issues, and we weren't going to do that. So we just stayed away from it completely. And I just told him I didn't want to talk about it whenever he would bring it up, and so he really wouldn't bring it up occasionally he would want to get a better sense. Maybe he could figure out why, and I would say that it made me very sad, and that I did not want to talk about what happened, and he accepted that.
Dr. Oziel testified that Erik said that he had noticed that your mother was getting very nervous and agitated shortly before she died and began locking doors. And do you remember any sort of discussion about what your mother's condition was right before they died?
I don't remember that.
Do you remember talking about what her behavior was during that period of time? Or do you remember?
I don't. Not when I was there. I don't remember that. He talked about her emotional state through that period and what she was feeling, but not specific to that weekend, because we never talked about what was going on that weekend. So.
Now, Dr. Oziel, Your Honor, could we perhaps take a break at this point? I'm going to start another section, so
Well, how much longer do you have?
I probably have another half hour to 45
Let's
minutes.
see if we can continue.
You indicated that, strike that. Dr. Oziel testified that you made a comment to him which said, you said that your father had said, you can kill me if you want to, but you won't get any money if you do, or words to that effect. That was Dr. Oziel's testimony. Do you remember telling Dr. Oziel anything about your dad and money? And whether you would get
Well, I
any?
told him I was out of the will, but I never told him that that conversation had happened, and there's no way that anybody that knows my dad would know that could never have happened, that somebody would threaten my dad. I would be in the hospital if I intimated to my father that I was going to kill him or hurt him. That could not have happened.
Okay,
And
so
the
they-
meek response that he would just say, you're not going to get any money, is Oziel just didn't really know that side of my father, and I did not say that, and I would never have said that.
And your dad wouldn't say something like, you can kill me if you want to?
That could never happen. Nobody would have said that to my dad, and he certainly would never have had that response.
Did you have any discussion with Dr. Oziel about what would happen if you had children and what they might do to you? Dr. Oziel testified that there was a discussion about what might happen to you and your brother if you had children, and that the two of you and your brother, expressed some fear that your children might end up killing you. Do you remember any discussion about that?
Yes.
And what was that discussion?
He was explaining to us that people tend to do to their children what their parents did to them, and how that sort of goes from generation to generation, and how that relates, and just expressing to us that we might control our children, and the same sort of dynamic might come up in our own families later on when we had families, and might rise to our children killing us.
Now, is that a topic that you brought up or Dr. Oziel brought up?
He was explaining, he brought it up. He was explaining to us that this is the phenomenon, or, that it goes from generation to generation, and how that could happen.
Dr. Oziel said that you told him that you were very sad about having killed your mother, and you didn't even like to think about the fact that you'd killed your mother.
Right.
Did you say something like that to him?
Yes, that's what I told him.
And Dr. Oziel testified that you said you didn't have any real maternal feelings toward her And you didn't really respond to her as being a mother figure. Is that correct?
That's right.
And he said that you told him that you saw her as a pitiful person, somebody who was completely dominated by the father, and that she had a lot of potential. Did you tell him that?
Not in those words, but I talked about the fact that she was very unhappy with the marriage and had been, and was at times dominated, but was an extremely powerful and capable woman herself.
Did you tell him that she was very bright and there were all sorts of things that maybe she could have been?
Yes.
But she was never able to do those things?
Right. And those are the things she had told me, so I told him that that's what she had said.
And he testified here that you acknowledged that you fired the shot that actually killed your mother in the end. Did you tell him that?
I did.
Is that because you believe you fired the last shot to your mother?
Right.
Do you know if she would have lived or not if you hadn't fired that shot?
My brother and I felt that she wouldn't have lived regardless. That
Is that from what you heard here in court, or is that what you knew the night you fired the shot? The night you fired the shot, did you know what condition she was in?
no, but we talked about it afterwards, and we felt.
Dr. Oziel said that he had talked to you about whether the two of you had killed your parents for the money. Did you talk to him about that?
Could you say that again?
Yes. Dr. Oziel testified that you discussed with him whether you killed your parents for the money or not.
That we discussed with him whether we had done for the money or not?
Yes. Was there any discussion of that nature?
Yes, we told him that. I told him that we were out of the will, and he seemed very involved with the financial aspect, with the estate and everything. And there was one moment when he tried to say that, I basically asked if that had something to do with it, and I told him that,
And when you
that I
say-
knew.
Excuse me, could he finish?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just about that part, I knew that it had not been for money.
You said that he showed some interest in the estate, in the financial matters. Is that correct?
Yes.
When had he first shown some interest in the financial aspect of the situation?
From the very beginning, when he came over shortly after my parents died at the hotel.
Did he spend a great deal of time at the hotel and around you right after your parents died?
Yes.
And what was he doing during that time?
Giving advice.
What kind of advice?
Well, just saying that he was there. When he was saying he was there if we needed him, we wanted to come to him for therapy, which we did not. But he was helping us find a lawyer that could handle the probate and giving us suggestions. And I guess he seemed to say he was a big businessman and knew lots of different lawyers, and he could help us with regards to that. And I believe that he did give us some suggestions.
Did he seem to be interested in how much money you were going to get?
I don't know at that time if he asked. We did have some discussions as to the problems with the estate, and that it would be very complicated since my dad basically didn't pay taxes and for several years. So he felt that we needed to get a big-time lawyer to handle it. And it revolved around that, so I'm not sure if figures came up because I didn't really know the figures at that point.
Did he seem to want to be involved in your financial future?
Yes.
In-
Certainly later on in the session, he wanted to.
And how did he express that interest?
Well, he said that he was under a tremendous amount of stress since my brother had come to him, and that he couldn't sleep, and that he was going to have problems working in the same way. That this was, very heavy burden for him, and that we were going to be getting all this money, and he was a good businessman. He showed us some of his business cards, and that he could be helpful if I was going off to school and investing the money, and that he had ideas, and that we could go into business together at some point. When I eventually, the estate went through and everything was processed and the money came through. Basically what we discussed.
Okay, when you say he was going to be of some help to you when the estate was processed and...
Right. At that time, I was thinking of going to school the next semester, and he was going to maybe help me, since I would be in school, help me invest the money. So at that time, that's what we were talking about.
And was it your feeling that if he came to you with some suggestions about how to invest the money, that you'd go along with them?
Well, I didn't feel that we had a lot of choice about going along with him.
Why?
Just, he had said he had tapes and safety deposit boxes. He was very nervous, uncomfortable. There was no confidentiality since he felt threatened. He could go to the police. The sense I got was that he was under a lot of stress and would have trouble working and wanted to be compensated by being able to help us invest and us go into businesses together, and we would both profit. He didn't want me to just give him money. He wanted to be legitimate, but he wanted to be involved, and he had lots of good ideas.
And did it ever come to pass that the estate went through and you got money from it?
No, I got arrested before the estate went through.
So you never had a situation come up with regard to him actually giving you a definite business proposal?
No.
Did you also think he had expectations with regard to you attending sessions or setting up sessions and paying for them?
Call for speculation.
Rephrase the question, please.
Did you believe that you were expected to continue seeing Dr. Oziel?
Yes.
And did you make a series of appointments and not keep them?
Yes.
Did you pay for them?
Yes.
Why did you do that?
Because I felt that, he was expressing concern right after the first meeting with just us not being in contact with him, and then as the relationship was getting, I thought at the end of November 2nd, he didn't seem concerned about us at all, and it seemed more like it was going to move into a business relationship as long as we agreed. And
You say he
but
didn't
never.
when you say he didn't seem concerned, are you talking about his fear level, or?
Yeah, he didn't. Yeah, he was saying that he felt threatened before, and he had made that joke about us planning to kill him, and so I felt like he was no longer afraid.
Okay, so that's what you thought on November 2nd.
Right.
Now, when you saw him on November 2nd, he said that he described two different types of killings. Do you remember him testifying to that?
Yes.
And he said that one killing was premeditated and involved a plan and a job that needed to be accomplished, something that had to get done. And there weren't any feelings, and that the second kind of killing was something that just came up all of a sudden. There wasn't any premeditation. It was like walking in and finding your wife with a lover, something like that. Do you remember him testifying here to that effect?
Right.
and that the second one was out of intense emotion, and it was just something that came out right away.
Right.
Did you have some sort of discussion with him with regard to different kinds of killings? Did he describe?
No, just those two.
Okay. How did he describe them for you?
Well, the first one was simple, that he basically just said it's when a man comes home and finds his wife in bed with someone else, and he had no idea, and in the spur of the moment he just, I guess, kills the guy, or whatever he said. And then the second one was something where you knew what the problem was, and it was sort of an ongoing thing, and this happened as a result of that. And he used the words you described there. I'm not exactly sure, because it was a much more complicated version and there was no example. It was just sort of more theoretical, and I just felt like...
When you say a much more complicated version,
right.
You mean he gave you lots more facts than he gave when he testified here?
He gave no facts, just a larger theory.
Okay. And did you and your brother pick one of those two?
Yeah, I'm not sure which one of us picked, but I know that we both agreed that it was more, neither one fit. It certainly wasn't the first one. And
why do you say it certainly wasn't the first one? The first one's where a husband comes home and finds his wife in bed, something like that.
Right.
Why wasn't it that one?
Well, because we knew that was something that was sort of like a surprise, and that the person didn't know anything about the situation until he walked in the room, and that certainly wasn't what happened. And it was more like the second one, where we knew what the threat was and what the issue was and the problem, and we had taken steps to protect ourselves, and this had sort of occurred because of that, and it was just more like the second one. So we just said that it was more like the second one.
Now, when he described it here, he said he used words like premeditated, a job that needed to be accomplished, weren't many feelings. Is that what you agreed with? Is that the way he described it to you?
No, he didn't say anything about a job needed to be accomplished or anything like that. He just described it as something where there was, I believe he did say a problem, and that what had happened was solve the problem. It's basically what he was saying. It was more along those lines. It didn't fit what happened exactly, but it was more closer certainly than the first example.
Did either one of them fit the situation?
No. He didn't know what the situation was, so he was sort of at a disadvantage.
Did you say to him neither one of those fit?
I believe I said that it wasn't really either of them, but it was more like the second one, is what one of us said that. It may have been myself.
Now, was it a crime where there were no feelings involved?
No, but I don't think that's what he said either. The second one was not one where there were no feelings.
When he testified here in court, he said that the second one involved premeditation. Do you remember him using that word when he talked to you and your brother about it?
No.
All right, let's take our recess at this point, and we'll resume at 3:30, ladies and gentlemen. Don't discuss the case with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it, and we'll resume with both juries at 3:30. Continue your direct examination.
Mr. Menendez, I'd like to take you back, if I can, briefly to October 31st, when you first met with Dr. Oziel. And Dr. Oziel testified here that excuse me, when you first came in, you said that it was extremely stupid that Erik had told him, Dr. Oziel, and had confessed all the details to the crime. Do you remember him testifying to that?
Yes.
And did you say that when you first went in on October 31st?
No. Maybe something to that effect, but not those words.
Did you say, did you tell Erik that you thought it was stupid that he'd confessed?
I may have said that.
And would you have said something about him having told all the details? It was stupid that he had told all the details of the crime?
No, I couldn't have said that because we didn't get into the details. In fact, I didn't know anything that he had told Dr. Oziel other than that he had confessed.
So when you arrived on October 31st, you didn't have a chance to talk to your brother separately, did you?
No.
And I believe you've testified here already that you didn't want to hear the details of what Erik had told Dr. Oziel. Is that correct?
Right, I wanted to hear him from Erik.
So the session that you had with him, or the time that you spent with Dr. Oziel on October 31st, was that directed at anything other than you're confronting your brother about having talked, and you're talking to Dr. Oziel about whether you're going to come in and have future sessions? Was that all that you talked about then? Do you understand the question, or would you like me to try again?
Well, there were other things that were talked. I mean, the confidentiality was talked about. Oziel's own feelings about the way I was acting.
Okay. Was there any discussion about the details of the crime?
No.
Was there any discussion about what specifically Erik had told Dr. Oziel?
No.
Did you say to him that since Erik had now told the details of the crime, it wasn't a perfect murder anymore?
No.
Did you ever tell him it was a perfect murder?
No.
Dr. Oziel said that when you first came in, you were very fearful that he would go to the police or tip the newspapers, and that you didn't believe there was any way for you to be safe now that Dr. Oziel had the information. Did you say something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Were you interested in giving him any more information?
No. Especially in that session.
Did you say something to Dr. Oziel such as that you'd have to figure out what to do about the problem?
I told him I hadn't decided what to do as far as whether I would agree to have a session with him and Erik again and discuss anything. Basically, I didn't want to talk about anything at that point. And I wasn't sure whether I would be seeing him again or not.
Dr. Oziel described you as menacing and threatening when you were in the room with him and your brother. You think that that's what your behavior was?
No.
What was your behavior?
Extremely upset, very sort of feeling cornered, and this whole thing going on with my brother, and whether he loved me and whether it was a betrayal of trust, and also a tense situation with Dr. Oziel about whether I should believe him that he wasn't, just go straight to the police, and that we should have further sessions with him, and it was very tense. And he did say that I seemed menacing to him, but I didn't mean to give him that impression.
Dr. Oziel said that you said you didn't feel safe, and you didn't know that there was any way you could feel safe with him having the information. Did you make a comment like that?
Yes.
Dr. Oziel said that you told him that you didn't want to have anybody looking over your shoulder, and that's why you killed your parents to begin with. Did you tell Dr.
No.
Oziel that?
No, and that's not why.
Dr. Oziel said that you seemed threatening and unhappy, and that some of it was directed toward Dr. Oziel, some of it toward Erik, and that Erik was getting increasingly agitated. Do you remember him testifying to that?
Yes.
And was Erik getting increasingly agitated?
Yes.
He says that at one point Erik buried his head in his hands and bolted out of the session. Did he do that?
Yes.
And as soon as he got up and bolted out of the session, did you leave or did you stay behind?
I went to follow him, and Oziel didn't want me to go, but I did follow him, and Oziel followed me. So we all left the office.
Dr. Oziel testified that he suggested to you that he thought that the two of you should come back into the office. Do you remember him suggesting that?
Well, not exactly. It was clear that Erik was not coming back into the office. He was leaving. But he did want me to come back in the office, and I was not hysterical and crying, and so I could have gone back up. I just told him that I needed to take care of Erik, and we could do it another time.
Did Dr. Oziel say anything to you about feeling threatened?
Yes.
And what did you say to him? Or did you say
I don't think I said anything. I mean, I was rushing to get my brother, and at some point in there, he said that he did not feel comfortable with the way the session was ending, that he felt threatened. And he might have said it earlier, too, actually. He said that I seemed menacing to him, and that he may have said, I feel threatened by the way you're acting. So he might have said it twice.
And Dr. Oziel testified that you said you weren't going to come back to the session, that you wanted to talk to your little brother, and that basically you just wanted to talk to your little brother before you decided whether or not you were going to talk to him anymore.
Right.
Did you say that?
Right.
Dr. Oziel said that you told him that you weren't sure that you wanted to talk to him anymore at all. And Dr. Oziel concluded that that was extremely menacing. Did you say you didn't want to talk to him anymore at all?
I said that I wasn't sure. That would have been earlier.
Dr. Oziel said that you shook his hand and said, "Good luck, Dr. Oziel." And he testified that he took that to be menacing and threatening also. Do you remember shaking his hand?
Again, I think it's in the hallway when I attempted to say goodbye to him before he followed me downstairs anyway. I may have said something like that, although I don't know what it was that he said that would have made me say good luck to him. I don't know if I said goodbye or what. So I don't know. I could have.
Dr. Oziel said that when he talked to you about having future sessions, that he told you he wanted to work on whatever it was that caused you and Erik to kill your parents. That's what he testified to here.
Right.
Right? And he said that you told him there wasn't anything to work on because what caused you to kill your parents wasn't here anymore, because they were both dead, meaning your parents. Do you remember saying that or something like that?
I may have said that.
What did you mean by it?
Well, that came because he was wanting to go farther than just figuring out why this happened and trying to, figure out the reasons for why he wanted to do actual more in-depth like therapy with me. And I felt very uncomfortable with him. I had felt uncomfortable with him in the past. And I think he knew at that point that I was feeling very distrustful and uncomfortable with him. Although at that point things were pretty good in the session. But still, I did not want to really work on like he wanted to, whatever it was that I was feeling, either before or after or because of what happened. And so I just tried to cut it off, and I made a statement that basically I don't want to work on anything with regards to me because he believed it was because of things my parents were doing or the dynamic, and the family was broken at that point, and my parents were dead, and there was nothing, whatever had caused it in his mind was gone. It was over with, whether it be the control or whatever. And so I'm pretty sure I remember saying something like that, although I don't think I used those words, but
Dr. Oziel asked or testified that you told him that you thought your father would have been proud of you for killing him, that your father knew he should have been killed, and that your father would have been proud of the good job that you did. Do you remember having any discussion with him about whether your father would have been proud of you or not?
We had I wouldn't say it was a discussion, but I was saying that I thought my dad would be proud that my brother and I had stuck together afterwards and were very close. And that was one of the reasons that it concerned me that he went to Oziel instead of me, because I felt that we had stuck together and were very close, and was trying to get him into the same school I was going to and so on, live near each other. And I thought that Dad would be proud of that.
Did you say anything about your dad knew he should have been killed?
No.
Did you say anything about your dad would have been proud of the good job that you did?
No.
Dr. Oziel testified that you told him that you believed that your father would only continue to take more and more money, would only continue to make more and more money as time went on. Did you tell him that?
Yes.
And Dr. Oziel testified that you had suspected that there was another will which would have disinherited the two of you. Did you tell
Yes.
Dr. Oziel that? And he testified that there had been a file on the computer marked will, and that you had arranged to have it erased. Is that true? Did you tell him that?
Not really, not the way that it is there. I explained to him exactly what happened with the computer.
He's testified that you said you erased it so that excuse me, that this was to erase the possibility of discovering a will that would have disinherited the two of you. Did you tell him that?
No, I didn't tell him that. And that couldn't be.
He testified that at one point, when he's talking about having the tapes, you expressed some concern in terms of strike that, if I may, Your Honor. Dr. Oziel tells you he has some tapes, and that if something happens to him, those tapes are going to be released. Is that correct?
Right.
And Dr. Oziel testified that in response to that, you indicated that you were concerned about whether something would happen to him accidentally and the tapes would be erased.
Right,
Or would be
especially,
released. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
especially after he mentioned the hitman. You know, I told him, this doesn't sound like a great precaution, because what happens if something happens to you and then just all this information is just released, and it could just be that you got into a car accident, or you mentioned the hitman and something about the hitman could have happened, or he could kill you or something, or there just seemed to be obviously anything that could happen in his life, because I guess they were going to be in the safety deposit box for his whole life, was what he was saying. So I was concerned about that, and
Did you make a joke about it, about protecting him? He said that you made a joke about if somebody broke into his house.
yes, I made a joke about it.
What was the joke?
Just that the way he had arranged it with the safety deposit box, it would be like I would almost have to be looking after him for his whole life, and if anything was about to happen to him, like if a burglar broke into his home, I'd have to be there to make sure that the burglar didn't do anything to him, because otherwise my brother's confession would go to the police.
Dr. Oziel testified that there was a discussion between you and your brother when you were there with him on November 2nd about how the family looked perfect, like the ideal family to the outside world, but in reality it was a disastrously negative family, that the marriage between the two parents was a very terrible mother. Do you remember having a discussion like that?
It was a very terrible marriage.
Did you have a discussion like that with Dr. Oziel?
Yes.
He goes on to say that you and your brother talked about the mother and father had almost no relationship except the negative, and it was an emotionally abusive relationship with the father being the abuser. Did you and your brother talk about that in front of Dr. Oziel?
Right.
Dr. Oziel says that you told him that you had nothing but distance with respect to the father, and all you got was criticism, rejection, humiliation, and that you also didn't have a closer nurturing relationship with the mother. Did you and your brother have that discussion in front of Dr. Oziel?
Right, that's not exactly true, but we had that discussion, and that was definitely his view through this entire thing, and I was not. There were things that were not correct about it, but I didn't correct him.
What wasn't correct about it?
Well, there were lots of things. I mean, certainly the change in the relationship between my mom and dad, I didn't mention to him and didn't explain why I felt that was happening. He saw my dad as the abuser and did not have a sense of who my mother was, and really the things that, she in her own way was very abusive to him, I felt, and meaning my father. And so I didn't get into my mother at all with him, because he felt she was suicidal, depressed, and it was like a mercy killing thing. So there were a lot of areas where he was really, it just wasn't correct, but we just stayed with what he felt pretty strongly about.
Dr. Oziel said that you talked about idolizing your father, but didn't use the word love with respect to him. Do you remember any discussions with regard to your father and idolizing him?
Yes. And I think he could get that sense, since I admired my dad a great deal, and I definitely told him that I loved my father. And he was trying to explain to me why that was strange, but possible. And it's just not true that I didn't tell him that.
Dr. Oziel testified that in some ways the two of you were in awe of your father and saw him as a very powerful person because he'd been controlling you for much of your life. Did you and your brother say that?
Yes, that was part of the discussion. I would not have just said it like that, but it's pretty close.
Dr. Oziel testified that you told him that killing your father was a way of vindicating that you had a level of power than yourselves. And you said that, he said that that was your statement, that you'd expressed what happened as a way of vindicating yourselves that you had a level of power, and that you'd finally gotten to the place where you did something perfectly. Did you ever tell him that?
No, but I do remember that.
What do you
that
remember
he
about
mentioned that as a possible reason or thing that was going on.
Who mentioned it?
That Dr. Oziel said that there might be this, the control might have caused me to react in a way to free myself from the control and be sort of vindicated that I had my own power as a person or something like that. And he talked about that. But we never talked about it, about the perfect stuff.
Okay. So when he talked about this vindicating yourselves and having a level of power yourselves, when he suggested it, did you say, no, you're wrong, or I've never thought about that, or just agree, or what'd you do?
No, see, it wasn't that I was just saying yes, 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 but I was mostly agreeing and I wasn't correcting a lot of things. But the way he says, he gives a long explanation, like using words like that, vindicating levels of power and stuff. It fits to some degree that there was power differences and the control, and so it was very easy to just agree with the things he was saying and discuss it.
And did you ever say that, did either of you ever say on that November 2nd session that you'd finally gotten to the place where you did something perfectly?
No.
Did you feel this had been the perfect crime?
No.
Dr. Oziel testified that he told you that he was going to collect all the mitigating details of your background and so that whatever happened down the road, if you got arrested, those mitigating details could be brought out. Do you remember him saying something like that?
Yes.
Did you think that he was talking about how the crime was committed, or what did you think he was talking about in terms of mitigating details?
Well, that was in the early part of the session when he was saying that he could be, in the event that we got arrested, he could be helpful in a trial to my attorney in piecing together the family constellation, which is basically what he said. And then, just helping explain the dynamic and the reasons as he saw it. He thought he was getting a very clear picture as to why it happened, even if we didn't know why. He felt he was getting a good picture and that he could help in a trial. And
so was it your understanding that this was going to be a collection of positive bits of information about you, or that he was going to be putting together things that would hurt you in a trial?
and positive things.
Dr. Oziel testified that that you had said you had been dating someone that you felt was a difficult person to date, and it was an accomplishment. and you said it was a Rose Festival queen and a billboard model. Dr. Oziel said these were two different women, and that your father had ridiculed and even made fun of these two women he was dating and called them both bimbos. Do you remember Dr. Oziel testifying to that?
Yes.
Did he call the billboard model a bimbo?
Who, my dad?
Your father. Did
Yes.
your father call the billboard model a bimbo?
Yes.
What about the Rose Queen?
No, that was the girlfriend. That was like his ideal. He picked her for me, and it didn't work out, but that's what he wanted.
So did you tell Dr. Oziel that your father had called the Rose Festival queen a bimbo?
No, I wouldn't have told him that.
Did you
I
tell
told
him that your father picked her as a girlfriend
Yeah,
for
I
you?
was trying to explain the difference. And I did not say that dating Christy was an achievement. I would never have said that.
Christy being the billboard model?
Right.
So is Dr. Oziel wrong here when he says that you said that your father called the Rose Festival queen a bimbo?
Yeah, he's wrong.
Did you just get it mixed up?
No, I mean, it sounds like he's just trying to make a point and using some of what I told him, but it certainly doesn't, it's not possible that I told him that.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
In a moment. Any examination on behalf of Erik Menendez?
No, Your Honor.
All right, you may approach. All right, there are a few matters that counsel want to discuss with the court before the cross-examination, so we'll take the opportunity of the next 20 minutes or thereabouts to do that. And rather than keep the juries here, we'll have you return tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Again, a reminder not to discuss this case among yourselves or with anyone else. Don't form any final opinions about it. Do not permit yourselves to be exposed to anything about this case outside of the courtroom. And before I excuse you, let me ask the Gold jury first whether or not any of you have seen or heard anything about this case outside of the courtroom since the trial began, other than those things that you've already told me about. All right, and likewise to the jury, the blue jury, have you been exposed to anything about this case outside of the courtroom other than what you've already told me about? If you have, would you raise your hands? Okay, nobody has. Okay, we'll see you all back here tomorrow at 9 o'clock. All right, the jurors have left. What matters did you want to discuss, Mrs. Bozanich?
At this time, I would ask the court for permission to question Lyle Menendez in front of both juries about this conversation he had with Dr. Oziel where the two types of murders were described, and I was going to question him about it using the word sociopath because I think that his description of that conversation and how it came about deserves to be pinned down more specifically. And he tried to explain away the murder, the sociopathic murder, and I think it's very clear that had Dr. Oziel been allowed to testify, as reflected in his notes, that Ms. Menendez would not have had the opportunity to explain it away quite as well, and that his response to the sociopath is far more incriminating than just saying, well, yeah, it kind of fits in with that kind of murder, even though it wasn't exactly the same. And the second area, if you want me to, there's just two areas of inquiry. The second one is Mr. Bird asked me if I was going to inquire of Lyle Menendez if he had had meetings with his attorneys in order to prepare for testifying, and I indicated that I was going to ask him how many hours he'd been preparing, and I was going to ask him with whom he prepared. And I do know from an article I read in the Daily Journal that Mr. Monis said to the Daily Journal that he has spent many hours preparing Erik and Lyle to testify. I have a copy of the article here. But I was going to ask Mr. Menendez what kind of preparation he did. So those are the two areas we wanted to discuss.
All right, and in regards to the other matter, the contents of the box that was referred to during the testimony of Mr. Stevens and the statement of Ms. Pisarcik, you were going to, our counsel was going to review the transcript to see if we have all the references in earlier court proceedings to that subject, and then we'll discuss it further before you complete your cross-examination.
Right, but I think I'll do that tomorrow.
Yeah, but that is another subject. All right, let me hear a response from counsel for the defendants in regards to these two areas.
As the court knows, the court excluded reference to that term as more prejudicial than probative, and left Dr. Oziel then free to describe two basic types of murder, one a premeditated first-degree murder and the other properly characterized as a heat of passion. And Lyle Menendez's explanation explained, at least as I heard it, that his choice of which version it fit, he explained why that choice was made. There was nothing in his testimony that would in any way make probative, or certainly would not make more probative than prejudicial, the reference to sociopath, since that really adds nothing to either the direct by Dr. Oziel or the cross, or the direct by Mr. Menendez. There was nothing that he referred to which would anyway make probative reference to the term sociopath. It's still prejudicial. It will remain prejudicial at this stage of the trial, and it is not probative of his explanation.
Any other response by other defense counsel?
Well, our position, of course, is that we didn't call Lyle Menendez. We objected to his testifying in front of our jury, and as a general, and we didn't question him. So as a general principle, we don't feel that we should be bound by things that he has said, nor that it was obvious when there was a 402 about these two examples that Dr. Oziel gave. It is, as it is in every piece of evidence that is somehow patterned in order to overcome objection, that there's going to be some slight deviation from truth on both sides. So Dr. Oziel did not testify, if you will, absolutely truthfully about what that conversation was about, but the conversation was patterned, if you will, to avoid a prejudicial and unprobative statement. By the same token, that puts the defense in a position, I assume that my co-counsel's position was, the point is still that Dr. Oziel claims to have given two choices, and the probative value is which one did he choose? And I think the fact that Lyle Menendez explained why he chose what was clearly a more damaging description would have to proceed from the admissibility of, from allowing Dr. Oziel to testify about this choice issue anywhere. But from our perspective, we, the Erik Menendez defense, have not offered any explanation for those two choices. And in any event, it doesn't add anything or change anything that the word sociopath was or wasn't used.
What I'll do is ask counsel to find reference in the hearing that occurred prior to the testimony of Dr. Oziel to this subject, and do that for me, and I'll review it prior to that subject being addressed during the examination of or cross-examination of the witness. And also, if you want to, in addition to that, I'd ask that you find the testimony of Dr. Oziel on that subject as well. And perhaps both sides can join in the effort so that it's not a burden just on one side. All right.
As to the second issue, which was raised as cross-examination of Lyle Menendez concerning meetings that he had with his defense lawyers or defense consultants who were not testifying, it's our position that that type of cross-examination is an impermissible comment on Lyle Menendez's right to counsel, and should not be permitted for that reason. In addition, it does not appear probative of any issue in the case to ask a defendant whether and when he has had meetings with his defense lawyer in a capital case, since by definition I think there are going to be and should be many meetings between a defense lawyer and his client in such a serious case, and it's simply not probative of any issue, and also is more prejudicial than probative, absent some foundation or some good faith belief that the prosecution had that there was something improper that was being done during these sessions. And I don't think that people are in possession of that kind of information.
Do you have any case law that stands for the proposition that you put forward here that the cross-examination of a defendant can't bring out the length of preparation that went into his testimony? Not the content of it, but just the length of it and the intensity of it and things of that nature.
I think a case which goes to that issue is People versus Allison, A-L-L. ISOM 48 Cal 3rd 879, and it's not directly relevant because the court in that case finds a waiver, but the discussion is based on questions similar to the type of questions that I think counsel proposes to ask in this case, and the premise, it seems to me, of the court's discussion is that it would be improper cross-examination. So that's one case that we could cite to the court. And there are a number of cases in the area of prosecutorial misconduct which say that it's improper for the prosecutor to insinuate that defense counsel was somehow involved in a conspiracy to fabricate evidence, absent some evidence to that effect. And it's our position that People versus Baines is one such case that we can provide to the court. And it's our position that that same insinuation is being made through this type of question, and that the prosecution, absent some evidence that defense counsel has done something improper, should not be entitled to exploit that inference.
All right, do the people have any cases you want to cite on those?
No, Your Honor. I don't have any cases on this specific issue.
Would you expect to have them tomorrow morning, or you just don't think there are any?
I've looked briefly for them, and I would like to read the Allison case, and maybe by shepherdizing it, I can find some other references. I couldn't find anything on point in my during lunch today.
That's the first time you looked at cases dealing with that subject?
No, it's not. I haven't found anything so far.
All right, well, I'll give you until tomorrow morning then to do that, and you can give the court any citations you have on the subject that might relate to the demeanor of the witness while testifying. Any other matters that counsel have to discuss prior to the cross-examination tomorrow? Anything else? Okay, we'll be in recess until tomorrow at 9 o'clock.